Hi, I'm Stassi Schroeder. On my podcast, I share candid updates from my personal life, chat with some of my best friends about what's going on in our lives, give commentary on the latest pop culture headlines, and sometimes deep dive into random topics I'm obsessed with, like human design. It's a bit all over the place, but that's how I like it. And you will too. Listen to my podcast, Stassi, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 399 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man. How are you? What's up?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
You and I are on our third episode of the night.
We are.
So by the time this comes out, Saturday night, we'll have dropped a Patreon episode, and it's on Carrie Murphy, who in 2012 called 911 to report that someone broke into her home and attacked her mother. But things, once the police got involved, weren't exactly what they seemed.
It's a good story.
Yeah, and there's a lot of twists and turns to it. And the same goes for our TCAT episode, where we're talking about Sean Gant, Benalcazar, headed to Austin, Texas. You know, there were 3 murders with similar circumstances in 2014. So police thought they had a serial killer. They didn't have DNA. What they had was a neighbor who came forward with some very interesting technology.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. That
very helpful.
Yeah, that led to the solving of this case. But this is another one where there were multiple people, fingers pointed, you know, both directions, who did what.
A chatty person.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. So make sure you check all of that out. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Sarah Elias.
Hey, Elias.
Samantha Peters.
Well, thanks, Peters.
Catherine Deacon jumped up to our highest level.
Look, Deacon in the house. Thank you.
Beth Kubera.
Ah, Kubera.
Rinda Hinskin.
Hey, Rinda.
Kita.
Good old Kita.
Destiny Valentine.
Hey, Destiny.
Adele.
Hey, Adele.
Ashton Graves.
Thanks, Ashton.
And Rebecca Marley.
What's going on, Marley?
So appreciate all the new Patreon support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Chlorange.
It's Chlorange.
Or it could be Chloron.
Yeah.
You know, they say there's no word that rhymes with orange.
You got me challenged. You're making me think about it.
No, there really isn't. That's like a real thing.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I feel like I'm being stumped.
No, that's not a trick. It's not a trick thing.
An hour later, I'll be like yelling out some word that I think rhymes with it.
Well, Chlorange does, if we want to say it like that.
Yeah.
You just add it, but it's not a real word. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Episode 399.
399.
You know what that means.
That means next week, we're coming at you with a big unsolved case.
We are.
Don't even want to give it away. That's how big it is.
Yeah.
But this week, we're talking about the Fort Worth missing trio. It was on December 23rd, 1974, that 3 girls went out Christmas shopping and never came home. 50 years later, their disappearance remains unsolved, with few leads and few potential suspects. 9-year-old Julie Ann Moseley was home that morning with her 11-year-old sister Jane and her 15-year-old brother Terry. Terry told Dateline years later, "My dad was out of the picture and my mom was having to work, so she wasn't home. I would be more careful now, but back then we were able to stay at home without a parent."
Well, that's true. I grew up in that time frame and it was a lot easier, or felt a lot easier and safer.
Yeah, I don't know if it was safer, but it did feel safer. I mean, we now know there were a lot of serial killers and serial predators operating right in the 70s and in the 80s. But I mean, this is a tough situation. Dad's not in the picture. You have a mother who's working her rear end off to raise 3 children. Got to go to work. Maybe, probably not maybe, more than likely, not enough money for daycare. And so you have a 15-year-old, you figure, well, he's old enough to take care of the 3 of them. Terry went across the street to see his girlfriend, 14-year-old Renee Wilson, who was staying with her grandmother. Terry recalled the dateline. Renee and I grew up together because her grandma lived across the street from us. For me and her, it progressed to being more than just buddies in the neighborhood. I went over early that morning. She had spent the night at her grandma's, and I gave her a promise ring. She was happy.
The good old days of the promise ring.
Okay, yeah. I don't know that I was giving them out at 15 years old, but I don't think I was promising anything at 15 years old.
From what I understand, you didn't promise a whole lot through your high school and college years.
Or keep a lot of promises.
Yeah, you might have promised, but you didn't keep them.
Before Terry left, Renee told him she wanted to go to the store to pick up some jeans she had on layaway. Renee wanted Terry to go with her, but he didn't because he was going to visit a friend in the hospital who was having surgery. Whatever happened to layaway?
That was a pretty big thing back in the day.
And not even that long ago, I feel like.
I mean, some stores still do it, but...
Do they? When I worked at Walmart in the early 90s, layaway was like, oh my gosh, it was like the whole back of the store.
Yeah.
People would come in, you put whatever, $10 down on something you're giving your kid for Christmas in 6 months or 4 months or whatever it was. And there would just be so much stuff back there.
Oh, I remember Kmart when I was growing up had a huge layaway department, And,
it was a big thing, and it's just kind of gone by the wayside for some reason. Maybe that's the proliferation of credit cards. I really don't know. Maybe stores just realized that was taking up a lot of space.
Taking up some valuable storage space. I do know in the area we live in, around Christmas time, didn't hear anything about it last year or the year before, but there used to be somebody that would go around to like 3 or 4 Walmarts and pay off big sums of layaway for people as a Christmas good deed thing.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I was under the impression Walmarts around here didn't even do it anymore, but maybe they still do. Now, Renee said she was going to the store with her friend, 17-year-old Rachel Trlica. Although Rachel was still in high school, she was married and a stepmother to a 2-year-old. Back in July 1974, Rachel married 22-year-old Thomas Trlica. Rachel knew Tommy because he was briefly engaged to her 19-year-old sister, Deborah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know that, that happens a lot. If it does happen, I can imagine, maybe that could cause a rift in the family dynamics. Are you telling me that you're going to marry the guy who I was engaged to? We may have a problem.
When you went to school, did you ever date somebody and then end up dating their sister?
No.
No?
No. And I never dated any of my friends' ex-girlfriends.
No.
Which was hard because I grew up in a very small town.
Yeah. How about any of your friends' sisters?
No. No, that was a no-no.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't the type of guy to just date for like a month. Yeah. I was a long-term guy.
You're a romantic.
Yes. Deborah told the Fort Worth Star-Telegram that she and Rachel shared a special bond. She noted that her relationship with Tommy wasn't that serious, saying we'd been engaged. Oh, it wasn't a real engagement. So maybe that's the reason why it went over rather smoothly, because Deborah wasn't really all that into him. She wasn't as serious about it maybe as Tommy was. I don't know, but it sure seems as though she didn't harbor some big grudge against her sister.
Which is good for the family.
And so much so that Deborah moved in with the newlyweds months after the wedding, after getting into an argument with her boyfriend. Rachel woke her up on December 23rd to invite her to go shopping, but Deborah decided to stay home. Julie, Terry Moseley's little sister, wanted to go shopping with Rachel and Renee. Her mother, Renee Ann Moseley, said in a 2009 interview with the Star-Telegram that Julie called and pleaded to go because she didn't have anyone to play with. Renee Ann knew Renee and her family, so she thought it would be safe.
And that happens. I've done that when my daughter, when she was growing up. You know, my nieces wanted to go to the mall and my daughter wanted to go, and I let her go. I felt, you know, she was going to be okay. She's with her older nieces. They're going to keep an eye out on her. And you just don't think about, at least back then, I didn't think about how dangerous it could have been.
Yeah, I get it. Renee's, 14, but Rachel's 17. So I could see a parent back then allowing that to happen. Terry Moseley told Dateline, I know Renee and Rachel didn't want Julie to go because she was only 9 years old. But Julie got our mom on the phone and begged to go. And for some reason, this time she said, okay. Our mom knew Renee well since I was in a relationship with her.
I mean, taking a 9-year-old to the mall or shopping, wherever you're going, probably puts a little bit of
crimping your style.
Yeah.
Well, I think going anywhere with a 9-year-old when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, that's a big difference in ages, maturity level. Maybe you want to talk about boys or whatever. I mean, one of the girls was married, but
yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
Right.
You want to talk about some things that you probably won't be able to in front of a 9-year-old.
Probably didn't feel like babysitting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Renee Wilson's grandmother said the girls left her house around 11:45 a.m. Per the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Rachel drove them in her 1972 Oldsmobile. First, they stopped at the Army-Navy store to pick up 2 pairs of jeans for Renee. Afterwards, they went to the Seminary South Shopping Center in Fort Worth, now called LeGrand Plaza Mall. What happened to the Army-Navy store? Are those still a thing?
I don't know.
Because you used to see those kind of all over the place, or at least here and there. I haven't seen one in a long time.
Now they're just Old Navy.
So Army-Navy all turned into Old Navy? Witnesses saw them at the mall, and one of them reportedly waved to a friend as they exited the mall via Sears. And I'm getting a real nostalgia here. The mall, when we were kids, that was like the place to go.
That's the only place you had to go.
And even as you got older, once you could go with friends or, on a Friday night, a Saturday night, the mall was kind of a hangout spot.
Yeah.
Now, I can't tell you the last time I've been to a mall, and half the stores in the mall are closed anyway.
Yeah, there's no big desire for you to go to the mall.
No.
I think if I ran into you at the mall, I would.
You'd be shocked.
I would. I'd be like, what is going on? Let me go outside. Are the planets aligned?
I'd either be getting a pretzel or an Orange Julius or something. It wouldn't be to buy like anything at the mall other than some kind of food. Maybe a Cinnabon, if they still have that.
Yeah, you do like those Cinnabons.
Rachel's younger brother, Rusty Arnold, said the girls were expected home around 4 p.m. for a party. They never showed up. And when parents started to arrive home from work, they noticed the girls still weren't home. The parents started searching. Renee's father, Richard Wilson, and his neighbors drove to the mall, which was less than 10 minutes away. They asked stores to make announcements about the missing girls. At 6 p.m., Rachel's parents found her Oldsmobile in the Sears parking garage. The vehicle was locked and the keys were missing. There were 2 pairs of jeans and Christmas presents inside the vehicle, which indicated they made it back to the vehicle after exiting the mall. And there was no sign of a struggle in or around the vehicle. But, as you just look at this kind of from a surface level, this has to be alarming for the parents.
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking, okay, they came back. They They put their packages in the car. What happened? What happened here in the parking lot?
Because it sounds like they're not in the mall, right? All these different stores made announcements. Nobody, came forward from the announcements. They're not in their car. They're not at their car. So where are they? The girls were reported missing to the Fort Worth Police Department that evening. Rachel's husband, Tommy Trlica, told the police that 4 items were missing from the glove box. 3 $50 bonds purchased by him and his first wife, and a copy of a will from his parents, who had both passed away. And it seems like a strange place to keep that type of stuff. To me, that's more of kind of like a bank safety deposit box type of inventory.
Yeah, or some type of lockbox at your home.
At your home, not your glove box,
Yeah.
which can be broken into rather easily. On the morning of December 24th, Tommy received a handwritten letter, supposedly written by Rachel. It said, per Dateline, "I know I'm going to catch it, but we just had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car is in Sears' upper lot. Love, Rachel." Rachel's name appeared to be misspelled. It looked like the sender had written Rachie and drawn over the E to make it look like an L. The letter was also addressed to Thomas A. Trlica, which was unusual because Rachel always called him Tommy.
So that would be bizarre, right? If you received a letter from your wife saying, Michael. I don't think I've ever heard your wife call you Michael.
No, because you have never been around when she's that upset. That is normally reserved for when she is extremely peeved at me.
So if I hear her say Michael, I should turn around and exit the house and come back at a later time.
Yes. But, these things are weird. Who doesn't know, how to write their own name? Who's going to mess that part up? Doesn't happen very often. And then addressing a letter to your husband in what is about the most formal way you can do it, when she always called him Tommy. That was strange. The letter was written in ink, but the envelope was addressed with pencil. According to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, there was no city name on the postmark, and the zip code, thought to be 76083, was blurry. The stamp had been canceled on the morning of the 24th. Rachel's brother, Rusty Arnold, believes the letter could have been mailed in the area of Throckmorton, Texas, 127 miles northwest of Fort Worth. However, private investigator Dan James told the Star-Telegram in 2000 that the 83 could have been 38 because the 3 looked like it was written backwards. This meant that it could have been sent from Ellisville, Texas. And if the zip code was 76088, it could have been posted in Weatherford.
So now we have 3 different locations that the letter could have came from.
And depending on what the actual zip code on the postmark was, in 2000, Thomas told the Star-Telegram, "I never thought it came from Rachel." And the families agreed. And the fact that Rachel's name appeared to be misspelled made them doubt that she actually wrote the letter. Rusty Arnold told Dateline, "It is of my opinion that Rachel did not write that letter, but that letter remains the only physical piece of evidence we have in their disappearance."
Yeah, but you have to ask yourself, if Rachel didn't write the letter, then who did and why?
Well, and I think that's why he's saying it's this valuable piece of physical evidence, because if she didn't write it, then most likely whoever did had something to do with the disappearance of these 3 girls. Terry Moseley said, "I don't underestimate the letter at all. The letter seems to me like it almost points to someone who knew them. People say it's to throw us off the track. Throw us off the track of what? There never has been any track." Back in 1974, police juvenile officer Billy Wilbank said about the letter, per the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, "It's her handwriting. but I don't know if she was forced to write it. And I think maybe that's where the letter, being written in pen, but the envelope being, written in pencil maybe comes in. Was she forced to write the letter, but then somebody else had to later fill out the envelope?
Right.
According to a later article by the Star-Telegram, handwriting experts have gotten inconclusive results over the years. So that's interesting because this police officer told the paper it's definitely her handwriting, but it sounds like handwriting experts are split. There's not a consensus that it actually is.
I mean, if this police officer thought that was her handwriting, it kind of steers the investigation in one direction. But now you have different thoughts on the handwriting, which makes you wonder, okay, if she didn't write that, you're back to that, who did and why did they write it?
Yeah, I'm assuming this police officer, Billy Wilbanks, was not a handwriting expert, but maybe he got that from the family. Maybe the family looked at it and they said, oh, yeah, absolutely, that's her handwriting. I don't know.
Could you identify your wife's handwriting, you think?
I think I could.
Yeah.
I've seen enough of it, but could I tell it apart if somebody was pretty good at copying it? That I don't know.
Yeah.
Investigators did collect DNA from the letter, but no match has ever been found. The police did not get fingerprints from Rachel's Oldsmobile and returned it to Tommy soon after it was found.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that seems like maybe an error on their part. The Fort Worth Police Department listed the girls as runaways for the first year they were missing. And maybe that's part of why they didn't do certain things. It goes back to some of the cases we've had in the 70s and even later on that where police, treated missing persons cases as runaways when it was thought then and especially proven later in many cases that they definitely should not have.
Right. But you have this letter, they're teenagers, you're thinking, okay, they ran off to Houston. They'll come back eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I understand maybe why the police leaned that way. Here's what I don't understand. Why not take the car?
Yeah. Did they think that it was going to be spotted by the police or?
Yeah. Maybe they thought they'd be tracked that way. And so why go buy all these presents that you're then never going to be able to give to the intended recipient?
And you really wanted to get your jeans that day, unless that was an excuse to go out. But why would you leave your jeans in the car?
Again, even if all of it was an excuse, why do you go through the motions of doing it all?
Exactly.
It's almost as if, okay, we went to the Army Navy store, we went to the mall, and then all of a sudden, this plan was hatched.
Let's run off to Houston together.
That just does not make sense.
And we'll take the 9-year-old with us.
Yes, exactly. And so I understand police have the letter, which is making them lean a certain way, but there seems to be a whole lot going the other way that makes it seem as though something's not right here. These girls just didn't run away. In early reports, the police said they had no reason to suspect foul play, but noted that none of the girls had ever been reported as a runaway. And the parents agreed that it was unlikely they would run away, especially 9-year-old Julie Moseley, even if the older girls made plans to leave home. Like you said, Gibbs, why would they take Julie with them?
Yeah, it just doesn't add up. You think, okay, we'll drop her off at one of these stores and the police will be called and they'll return her back home.
Her parents will come pick her up or, whatever. One officer was quoted as saying, 9-year-old girls just don't run away 2 days before Christmas.
Well, that is true.
Well, and you could make the argument that most 14-year-old girls are so jazzed about Christmas, they wouldn't at that point either. The police received many leads, but none of them panned out. In late December, detectives questioned a watchman at Alcon Laboratories who said he saw a car containing 3 girls and 2 men enter the firm's driveway on the evening of December 23rd. The police also spoke to an employee of a bus company who recalled 3 girls asking about fares to Houston and other cities between 8 and 11 a.m. on the 24th. They didn't purchase tickets. His description was similar to the missing girls, but the police weren't sure the information was reliable.
It's strange information to give, though.
It is, but in how many cases do you have tips come in where people say they thought they saw this person or this group of people? Now, this information about specifically asking about Houston is kind of hard to dismiss, but who knows? By December 30th, the families expressed their growing concern for the missing girls' well-being. The letter said they would return in about a week, and the 30th marked 1 week since they went missing. And so, from the beginning, I think, you're skeptical, you're concerned, especially if you're the parents of this 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And even the 14-year-old. But then after the week goes by and they don't return as the letter said they would, I think your level of concern and fear has to go up even higher. In January, the families reached out to a psychic identified as Mr. Joseph from Dallas, who said, per the Star Telegram, dope is involved. There are 3 to 5 people involved, and the girls are being held against their will.
Well, if you're the family now, you are very nervous.
Well, Renee's mother said she wasn't ready to believe the psychic, but after so long, she wasn't ready to disbelieve either. On February 8th, 1975, the police arrested a 14-year-old girl who was caught placing prank calls to Renee Wilson's parents. She admitted to making 3 calls to the Wilsons and 1 to the Moseley family. She was silent in the Wilson calls, but in the Moseley call, she claimed she told Terry Moseley she was Renee. The girl could give no explanation for her actions.
Again, it just makes you wonder, what is wrong with people?
Yeah, I mean, this is a 14-year-old girl, but we hear it time and time again, especially in unsolved cases where, people want to write letters or they want to make calls, and all they're trying to do is hurt the family.
Yeah.
Why? Why would someone want to do that? Now, it's a little harder to explain why a 14-year-old would want to do it. A lot of times these are, adults. That makes it even harder to understand. The police were also investigating a report of a man in a gold car who pulled into a service station in Euless around 2 a.m. on the 8th with 3 girls in the back of the car. He asked the station employee to purchase a beer and left when he told it was after hours. As he drove away, one of the girls dropped a flyer out of a car window that had information about the missing girls.
Now that's interesting.
It is, but like everything else, what does it mean? Does it mean that it is one of the missing 3 girls and they're trying to alert somebody that they've been kidnapped? If so, why would they even have this flyer? Why would they be allowed to have the flyer? If not, then are you looking at another prank?
Yeah.
Where someone is trying to make the family believe that their girls were at this gas station. In March 1975, Rachel's mother told the press that she spoke to 3 clerks at a store in the Seminary South shopping center who said an elderly woman discussed seeing the 3 young girls in distress. On the day of the disappearances, one man was forcing a girl into a truck, and inside the truck were 2 girls and another man. The Star Telegram appealed for this woman to come forward, but it seems like this was another lead that didn't pan out. And that seems like a really good lead.
It does. It makes you wonder, did one of the girls and the 9-year-old go back to the car, put things in the car, and was going to come back to the mall to meet up with the 3rd girl, and in between that got kidnapped, and then the kidnappers were trying to get the 3rd girl? there's so many scenarios you can run through your mind.
Yeah, but then you have to question whether there was really someone who actually saw this and said this, because if so, why not come forward?
Yeah, what's the harm of coming forward?
First off, like when everything happened, why would you not go to police? And then after all these appeals go out for you to come forward, then you don't. That seems strange to me. The families began working with private investigator John Swaim. In March 1975, Swaim held a press conference where he criticized the police for refusing to give him access to the case file. He believed the key to the disappearances could be found in a recorded conversation of a phone call to police dispatchers on the evening of the disappearance. According to Swaim, a license number and description of a vehicle were in that tape. The police chief told the Star-Telegram that all dispatcher tapes were erased every 60 days, and he had no knowledge of the taped conversation. Now, we are talking about the 1970s, technology a long way away from what it is today.
I think if there was a conversation where a license plate was given, you would think that would have ended up somehow written down.
Or getting to a detective, getting into a file. But the fact that you had to erase all these tapes every 60 days, that's tough because you may not get your lead in that 60-day period.
Sure.
Your lead might come after that, and then that information's gone forever. But, media storage was not the best in the 1970s. Swaim was given access to the case file hours after his press conference. On April 9th, 1975, John Swaim announced a search would take place between two bridges in South Texas after he received the tip that the girls were killed and their bodies were hidden under a bridge near Port Lavaca, which is 330 miles south of Fort Worth.
Pretty healthy drive.
Yeah, that's quite a ways. And this area under the bridges had already been searched once that year. The Fort Worth police received similar information in February and notified Port Lavaca. The bridges had already been searched, but by April, the water level under the bridge was lower. Swaim had several hundred volunteers for the new search. And that's a lot of volunteers. And we're always blown away, right, by the number of people who come out to freely give their time.
Yeah.
But the search ended on April 13th with no new results. Human bones were found in Bexar County later that month, but the medical examiner determined they were not those of the missing girls.
Somebody's bones, but not the girls' bones.
Yeah, and I don't have any information on who it was or if they were missing or anything like that. But I think what all of this does is that it really highlights the roller coaster of emotions, right? You have just tons of stuff coming up that I'm sure the family got wind of much of it. There's a report that their kids are buried under this bridge. Okay, they're not found. Human bones are found. Maybe it could be our girls. They're not. I can only imagine what those ups and downs are like for a family who has a missing loved one. I think anytime you hear about anything like this, whether it's in the town you live in or hundreds of miles away, you have to be wondering, does this pertain to my missing loved one?
I'd have such a pit in my stomach this whole time.
Yeah, it has to be agonizing. In August 1975, P.I. John Swaim announced that a 28-year-old man arrested for obscene phone calls could potentially have information about the disappearances. The man's name had come up multiple times since he began investigating in March. The man was arrested at a shopping center after he agreed to meet a 15-year-old girl there. The arrest was orchestrated by Swaim. The girl and her sister had been receiving obscene phone calls from him for the past 2 years. The girl's parents contacted the PI after she convinced the caller to give his name and address. The local police came to the shopping center to make the arrest, but the man didn't show up at the designated time. The detectives left, and Swaim called the girl, who was safely at home, to ask if the man contacted her. The suspect eventually did call the girl and apologized for being late. He rescheduled their meeting for 2:30 p.m. He arrived before detectives returned, so Swaim and his men detained him until officers arrived. The suspect had a 5-year probation sentence for indecent exposure.
Sicko, man.
Well, I mean, you don't want your 15-year-old to be meeting an adult man.
No.
But you sure as heck don't want her to be meeting anyone with a record like this. And what adult man wants to meet up with a 15-year-old girl? I mean, there just has to be something so very wrong on that person's mind.
Absolutely.
To want to do that, right?
Yeah.
A background check revealed he worked for a store in South Fort Worth where Rachel Trlica applied for a job shortly before she disappeared. Swaim said the man had been using his position at the store to get the names and numbers of young women who applied for jobs. He knew of at least 6 women who applied for jobs at his workplace that had received obscene phone calls from this guy.
So he really was a sick guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's just preying on, all these young girls and women. You and I have talked about obscene phone calls a lot. I know you were very candid about the fact that your mom received a bunch of them.
She did, yeah.
At one point in time. And I know why these guys were doing it, right? Sexual gratification, something like that. But I'm sure, Gibbs, what they were not taking into account, and probably what they didn't even care about if they did, was the harm that they were doing to the girls and women on the other end of these lines.
Yeah, it's very disturbing.
Because, you're traumatizing these people. You're making them fearful for your own sick pleasure. Now, what kind of person does that? Is it a person who could potentially progress to maybe kidnapping young women and young girls, sexually assaulting young women and young girls, and potentially killing young women and young girls? And I would say the answer is yes. We have seen it.
We have.
Through episodes of True Crime All the Time, how killers progress. It could start out as stealing underwear off a clothesline, to peeping into windows, to sexual assault, eventually to murder. We've seen it time and time again.
Sadly.
But why is it? It's because what may give them the thrill at some point eventually doesn't. And so I feel like they have to up or escalate.
Go to the next level.
Go to the next level. And that may give them what they're seeking for a while. I've made the parallel to drugs. Doing a certain amount of drugs might give you exactly what you're looking for a while. But at a certain point, it may not. And then you got to either up that or go to something harder, or, that's just how it works.
This idea of progression is a very scary thought.
No, it really is, because it happens with so many different things.
And what we're talking about is really relevant to today too, right? Phone versus internet. What happens with this guy making phone calls and kind of stalking these victims is really no difference than people stalking somebody on the internet.
Which is what they would probably do nowadays. Yeah. Because I think the phone call is hard today with all the technology.
Yeah.
Much easier to trace. People have caller ID, all kinds of technology. Swaim also noted that the man lived in the same neighborhood as Rachel's parents, but moved shortly before she got married. Okay, so, we don't know that this is the guy, but he is checking some boxes. He also drove a car that matched the description of one seen parked near Rachel's home the day she disappeared. A year after the disappearances, the case was reassigned to the major case unit after the PI and the families expressed frustration over the status of the investigation.
Well, your kids have been gone for a year. You're going to be frustrated.
Yeah. I mean, frustration on the part of families in unsolved episodes, that's something that you almost universally see. Because how can you not be frustrated until you're reunited with your loved one or the case is solved in some manner? The longer it goes on, the more frustration builds. It's just a natural thing.
Yeah.
Thomas Trlica sought divorce from Rachel. In April 1976, he had moved to Throckmorton, Texas. By this point, per the Star-Telegram, Rachel's mother revealed that he had plans to remarry in June.
I don't know how I feel about that. It's been 2 years.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, you can look at it a couple of different ways. It's been a number of years. At some point, does a person feel like they need to move on? Some people may say, it's too quick. It's too soon.
Yeah.
And others may not.
It's like the movie Castaway. He comes home after being on that island.
And you feel as though Helen Hunt was supposed to wait for him for all those years?
Not marry your dentist, his dentist.
Private investigator John Swain died on October 19th, 1979. He overdosed on drugs and alcohol, and his death was ruled a suicide. He had ordered that all of his case files, including the Fort Worth missing trio, be destroyed after his death.
That's so bizarre. I wonder if any and all the things that he had seen investigating this case and other cases, just he couldn't handle it.
It could be. It could have played a role. I don't know. But the destroying of the case files, that's tough. Another search took place in 1981 after bones were found in Brazoria County. The search lasted days, and some bone fragments were found, but investigators determined that they were not the remains of the missing girls. So, the case has been cold for decades. Surviving family members are frustrated by the lack of details released over the years. Terry told Dateline in 2018, the current investigators, they're doing what they can do off of old information. They're having to question people who have 44-year-old memories of this. But we're still in the exact same spot that we were 44 years ago. Terry said his mother never forgave herself for allowing Julie to go shopping that day. I know she regretted it. She tried to blame herself. If I just said no. And that's another thing you often see in these types of cases, a decision that someone makes. In this case, allowing your daughter to go shopping with someone 99.999% of the time. Nothing goes wrong after making that decision.
That's true.
But in this case, it did. And no matter what people tell you, that, you can't blame yourself, there's no way you could have known that this was going to happen, it's not going to stop someone from beating themselves up, feeling guilty, feeling like they did something wrong.
Yeah, I don't think you ever get rid of that guilt.
No, I don't think you ever get rid of the heartache, the anguish, and I don't think you get rid of the guilt. Rusty Arnold has dedicated all his spare time to solving the case. He started the Missing Fort Worth Trio Facebook page, which has thousands of followers. He noted that people all over the world follow the Facebook page, which helps spread awareness about the case. He told NBC DFW in 2017, I spend maybe 4 to 8 hours a day on this case, digging, searching. I'm not going to stop ever until we find out what happened.
It's dedication.
It is, but it's also, what you often see. We talked about anguish and grief and guilt, but there's also something where people get consumed by the quest for answers.
Sometimes it's unhealthy.
And it can reach unhealthy levels, but at the very least can, take up a lot of their time. It can be to the detriment of, relationships and things like that. But you also have to applaud, right? This guy, he's trying to do something to find these girls. In the summer of 2018, Rusty began working with Texas EquiSearch to organize a search of Benbrook Lake, located near the shopping center where the girls disappeared. Texas EquiSearch located 3 cars in the water using sonar, and a volunteer dive team agreed to try to bring the vehicles to the surface. It was a difficult operation because the cars were nearly 40 feet down in murky water.
That would be tough to do.
Yeah, I mean, Texas EquiSearch does amazing things. We've talked about them many times. Rusty was drawn to the lake after learning about someone whose car went missing around the time the girls disappeared. He told Dateline that if a person wanted to dispose of a car, Benbrook Lake would be the nearest place to do it. 2 cars were removed from the lake on September 22nd, 2018. Rusty told Dateline that a diver brought up a piece of the 3rd car and said, "I was able to identify what kind of car it was before we even brought it out of the lake. We're going to bring it out of the lake this spring. All I can say right now is that it is a car of interest."
I mean, there's a lot of hope here.
Yeah, I think any time you get like this, I don't want to call it a new piece of evidence because we don't know if it is.
Right.
But you get something that makes you hopeful and it kind of renews the search. The other thing is I'm always amazed when they do searches of some of these lakes and bodies of water, rivers, how many cars are found?
Yeah.
It always, blows my mind.
And why is so many people putting their cars there?
Yeah.
What are you trying to hide?
I don't know. I'm assuming they're not finding like remains inside the cars, or that would be part of the conversation. Forensic scientists didn't find any remains or any sign of the missing girls in the first car. They did get a VIN number that investigators traced to see if it was connected to any other cases. Ultimately, there was no evidence tying any of the cars to the disappearance of the Fort Worth trio.
And then the disappointment sets in.
And I think that's where the roller coaster of emotions comes in, right? There's hope when something is reported. Okay, it could be interesting. It could lead to us finding something out. And then all of a sudden, once all the investigative work is done, it comes back that no, none of these cars have anything to do with the disappearance of the girls. Well, that's, you're right back down to the bottom again.
Yeah.
In May 2023, Clear Channel partnered with the Texas Center for the Missing and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to generate tips for the cold case by putting up billboards across North Texas. Clear Channel did a month-long public service campaign in recognition of National Missing Children's Day.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Clear Channel is huge. I don't know what all they own. I think they own a ton of radio stations, maybe even television stations. They have a big reach.
Big media.
Yeah, big media reach for sure. December 2024 marked 50 years since the girls disappeared. There have been thousands of tips and alleged sightings, but the girl's whereabouts are still unknown. If she is still alive, Julie Ann Moseley would be 59 years old today. Renee Wilson would be 64. Rachel Trlica would be 67. And I think that really puts it into perspective how old this case is. Julie was 9 years old when she went missing.
Yeah.
She would be 59 years old today.
Just a year older than myself.
Rusty Arnold told Dateline that his mother, Fran Langston, puts 3 angels on her lawn every year during Christmas to symbolize the missing girls. His sister's disappearance affected his parenting. He said he was overprotective of his children and gave them cell phones at a young age so he could always know where they were. He told the Daily Mail in 2024 that a woman recently came forward and told him she was the one who wrote the letter.
Wow.
Okay. According to Rusty, she said that she lived 2 doors down from Renee's family, and sure enough, that was true. She said her daddy forced her to write the letter, and he told her what to say to cover something up. She thinks her daddy did this. We pursued it as far as we could go. It got turned over to the police, and I believe they got her DNA. I think they're going to compare it to the DNA on the letter. We went to my lawyer's office and had her rewrite the letter. I told her exactly what to say. Our handwriting expert says that, she didn't write the original letter. She said she came forward because it was on her conscience, and she just wanted to let us know what happened. But understand, I get these stories all the time.
So you're back to square one again, right?
Yeah, if she really didn't write the letter, then, it's kind of another cruel hoax.
Yeah.
Why? For a little bit of limelight, possibly, to be the center of attention for a little bit. The problem I have with that is, aside from what you're doing to the family, whatever attention or limelight you get is going to quickly turn very negative.
Against you.
So that part doesn't make sense. The other thing is, okay, it's been 50 years. So 50 years later, your conscience got to you.
Yeah.
But it took that long.
Seems like a long time.
Yeah. Fran Langston, the last surviving parent of the missing girls, believes the strongest lead came from an elderly man who believed he saw the girls in a van behind Sears. He was waiting in his car for a friend and saw 3 men with the girls. A girl he believed was Rachel Trlica approached his vehicle. According to Fran, she grabbed hold of his door and begged him to please help her. He was going to help, but was told to mind his own business. The man with Rachel said, "This is my wife." While this was happening, 2 other girls got out of a nearby van, but 2 men forced them back inside. When the witness returned to town a few years later, he contacted Rachel's family. After seeing a story about the girls on the local news, he visited Fran Langston at home. He saw a picture of her daughter and said, "That's the baby who asked me to help her, and I couldn't do it."
Wow.
Fran told the Daily Mail, "Now, with all my heart, that's what I believe happened." The witness has been long dead now. That was 45 years ago. The police tried to give him some polygraph tests, but he wasn't healthy enough and was also hard of hearing. Rusty explained the man wasn't involved in the disappearances and the police couldn't do anything with his tip, so they dropped it. So let's just examine that for a minute. And first of all, you have to assume that what the man said back then was correct.
Right.
And then that he did see a picture of one of the girls later and was correct in his identification. I think you have to zero in on Rachel and this man saying, "Hey, mind your own business. This is my wife." Because Rachel actually did have a husband.
So we're not looking to him at that time?
Which I'm sure police did.
Yeah.
We don't have the details, or the specifics behind exactly what they did. Now, it could also be that an abductor might go with that line.
Sure.
Thinking that would put off some wannabe hero. Okay, well, there's nothing for me to do. This is man and wife. I'm not going to get...
Just a domestic issue. Yeah.
I'm not going to get in the middle of that. So it doesn't necessarily mean, even if it's true, that it was her husband. And I thought he was kind of ruled out, by alibis. Now, we know alibis have come apart before, but I thought he had a pretty strong alibi.
I think it would have been helpful if the police were able to get with him and either show him pictures of Rachel's husband or somehow have him view a lineup with Rachel's husband in there and say, okay, any of these people look like the guy that you seen that day?
Yeah, I'm not sure why this individual didn't go to police. It makes it sound like he either left shortly after all of this happened, maybe didn't hear about, the girls going missing, because it said in the research that he returned to town a few years later. But you're right, if he had really thought something was going on, if he had gone to police and told them that story, then maybe they could have showed him some pictures of different individuals and he could have picked some people out. Again, you don't get all the details.
No.
In unsolved cases. You never do. Rusty also said that the disappearance caused a rift with his older sister, Deborah Hopper. They didn't speak for 20 years. Rusty explained, I thought she may have had something to do with it, but I was wrong. We proved it through DNA. So he didn't talk to his sister for 20 years because he thought maybe she was involved.
Wow.
That's rough.
That's a long time to have a disagreement with your family.
And it's just another example of how these tragedies affect everyone who's left, right? Oftentimes, many of these families are just ripped apart. There's been speculation that Thomas Trlica, Rachel's former husband, was involved, but he's never been named a suspect. Tommy went bowling on the evening of the disappearances. And again, so, did he have an alibi that police checked out? Obviously, most people don't go bowling by themselves.
No.
You're with a group that should be able to be verified. But then you have this guy saying, hey, there was a man, he said, butt out, this is my wife. I'm sure that has a lot to do with people thinking he might have been involved.
Sure.
And then he divorces Rachel and he gets remarried. But again, it's 2 years later.
It is.
Tommy cited abandonment when filing for divorce against Rachel. And we said it, right? In December 1976, he remarried. What we didn't say is that he remarried another 17-year-old girl.
And if I remember right, he was like in his early 20s when he married Rachel.
He was 22, I think, at the time Rachel disappeared. So now he's 24.
Yeah.
Give or take. I mean, that's Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused. I keep getting older, but the girls stay the same age. I mean, he played kind of a lecherous,
he did,
character in that movie. He was funny, but it was 1970s type of talk that wouldn't fly today.
A little creepy today.
Yeah, very, very creepy. Well, it was creepy back then.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, recognized as creepy today. Fran Langston said about her former son-in-law, per the Daily Mail, I don't think he really cared. We don't want him in the city limits of Fort Worth. She added that a lot of people said Tommy had something to do with the disappearances, but he passed 2 polygraphs. So make of that what you will. I get it. She doesn't like him, but that alone doesn't really mean a whole lot.
No, I mean,
passing 2 polygraphs is fine. Again, I'm not a huge fan of polygraphs,
right.
So I'm not going to make too much of that. That doesn't conclusively clear someone in my mind, but I think that, along with the fact that there's no evidence against him, makes it hard to, cast a long shadow over him.
I mean, and that guy said there was 3 guys in that parking lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he has an alibi that he was bowling that night. Maybe those 2 guys were his bowling partners.
Maybe that was his alibi.
An alibi, but we don't know.
We have
We're
no
never
idea.
going to know.
No, especially 50 years later. I don't think you're going to know. At one point, Rachel's family thought her disappearance was connected to the death of 17-year-old Leisha Ann McGee, a local girl and family friend. Leisha went to visit friends on January 22nd, 1978. The following day, her body was found in her car a few miles from home. She was stabbed to death. Terry Moseley told the Daily Mail he thinks the perpetrator was probably someone who knew Rachel Trlica, since she was the oldest of the group. He said there was no way Julie would run away from home because she was so young and excited for Christmas. If you have any information about the disappearances of the Fort Worth missing trio, you can call the Fort Worth PD at 817-335-4222. You can contact Detective Leah Wagner at 817-392-4307, Detective John Galloway at 817-392-4336, or Detective Jeff Bennett at 817-392-4308. You can also email coldcase@fortworthpd.com.
Hey, look, I think a 19-year-old could run away. I think you could even say maybe a 15-year-old could run away, especially if it's with one of her older friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be really hard for a 9-year-old to want to run away. Not saying she wouldn't go along with the two other girls, but why would the two other girls want to bring her along?
Yeah, I think that was a good point that you made earlier. You could say that, maybe a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old could hatch a plot to run away, but why would they want to willingly take a 9-year-old with them?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. I agree with Terry Moseley, a 9-year-old wanting to run away right before Christmas. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, I feel like if there was this plan to run away, it could have been thought out and done better.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Why do the shopping they did if they were going to run away? Why not just go right from the start to get, further on?
Yeah, it just doesn't add up.
No.
The way, and I know I said 19, I'm not saying 17-year-old,
yeah.
But it just doesn't make sense. And I agree with the mom that the guy that saw the activity outside by the van,
outside Sears,
is probably the best lead.
Probably.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know if he ever contacted police. I don't know if they ever, talked with him. It just seemed strange.
Yeah.
It sounded like he didn't even know something was wrong until he came back years later. But even then, did he not talk to the police?
Yeah, did he not say, oh, that's her?
Yeah, I got to go to the police right now.
And let me tell them what I seen that day.
And maybe he did, but they're just, there was nothing in the research about it. It's a sad case, as these types are. It sounded to me as though, the two older girls really weren't crazy about Julie going along with them. I get that.
Yeah.
At that age, do you want a much younger person tagging along with you? But I don't know that had anything to do with a desire or a plan to disappear. And, my thought always is the likelihood of one person, let alone a group of people, wanting to, run off and start a new life versus something bad happening to them. I just think the percentage is not in the favor of that happening. Not to say that it doesn't happen.
No.
But my feeling is that something terrible happened to these three girls and young women.
Yeah.
Because I always feel like at some point they're going to surface or they're going to hit a radar, whether it's, get put in a DNA database.
Right.
Or slip up and get arrested and authorities, run their fingerprints maybe and ultimately find out who they really are. 50 years is a long time.
It's a really long time.
But we never say never.
No.
This is a case that we could learn the truth about maybe at some point. It becomes tougher as the years go by.
It does. I mean, you hope for the best, though.
But that's it for our episode on the Fort Worth missing trio. We have some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. It's Terry in Missouri. I was just listening to the Unsolved case, Bella Wright, and you were talking about the fact that he was coming and overtaking her, basically. And so I just was remembering when we were in Scotland and England, they're called overtake lanes. So it was like basically on the highway, it's not passing lanes, they're overtake lanes. So that's what it was called. And then they even have like little inlets on like 2-lane roads called passing places where you can kind of get over a little bit so someone can pass. And it's just little signs that say passing places. So I just thought that was kind of cool. And when you were mentioning that, I was remembering on the highways, it was called overtake lanes. So just thought I'd let you guys know and keep up the good work. Love you guys. Bye.
All right. Love you too and appreciate the information. And maybe that's exactly what it was. Maybe that's what it meant.
Could have been.
Don't know.
From Batavia, and I'm very disappointed in myself because I made it a goal to listen to every single one of your episodes by the 1-year mark. Sorry, that's my toddler in the background. But I was 10 short, and I was like listening to probably 5 or so a day pretty consistently, and I was 2 days short. 2 days of listening short. Well, I got to get these finished up so I can start on your Unsolved. And that'll be my next year's goal, is getting Unsolved completely listened up to before the 1st of 2026. Keep your head on a swivel. Bye.
You know, technically, you probably would have made it. Wasn't last year a leap year?
I have no idea.
So you got screwed out of a day. So there's your 10. So technically, you really made it. Congratulations. You know,
I love your math, though. So she's started probably by now, started on Unsolved. Now, if she's going in order, it's going to be a while.
Sure.
Before she hears this voicemail,
Yeah.
but a little Easter egg stuck in there. And how cool will it be when she gets to that point where she hears it?
Maybe she'll be like me when I do things like this. I go with one on this end and then one down on this end. I work my way towards the middle.
And some people do that.
Yeah.
But some people have to go in order.
Oh, I know.
I mean, have to. And, but some people will start from the beginning, but listen to the most recent.
Yeah.
And then go back and finish where they were in the beginning. But when the new one comes out, listen to that one.
Yeah.
And then kind of meet eventually.
Like a little teetering.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah, thanks for the voicemails. Appreciate them.
We do.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
And Gibby.
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Pluto TV is the place for movie fans like me.
And TV fans like me.
They've got something for everyone, and it's totally free.
You can binge laugh out loud sitcoms like Frasier.
And rewatch cult classics like Higher Learning.
Whether you're in the mood to solve a little crime before bedtime with NCIS or Tracker.
Or curl up with a surefire hit like Forrest Gump.
Run, Forrest! Pluto TV has thousands of movies and shows, all for free.
Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.